Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and we're also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news. We put out a lot of content throughout the week that includes more in-depth stories that the team and I work on for you guys. That also includes local stories through our field messengers, which I'll tell you more about in just a bit, and updates from the Global Intelligence Agency as to what's really going on here on our planet in this huge battle of good versus evil that is playing out. And I'll tell you what, it really seems like a lot of people are waking up to that fact, right? There's just so much happening and a lot more people. I don't know if it's just my news feed or the shows and things that I happen to watch on YouTube, but there's a lot of people, especially with the Epstein files, that are really starting to question this version of reality. And if you're one of those people, if you've never heard of United Network News, you're in the right place, okay? Because we question everything, and we try to provide a little bit of background to some of the stories that you're seeing out there. If you want more information about United Network News, who we are, what we do, you can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. This podcast is a week in review. So like I said, we go through the stories that we have discussed through the last week. And, you know, there's a lot of content that comes out and you guys may have missed something. And so we like to give you an overview of those stories. Of course, with everything that we release, we encourage you guys to think critically. You know, really think about what we're saying, ask questions, do your own research, and share that information with other people because that's how we all learn and grow. I know it has been a crazy, crazy week for everyone, emotions kind of all over the place. As we were talking about in last week's podcast episode, the U.S. government and Israel launched some attacks on Iran. And boy, they fired back in different ways. And that's really what our whole week has been about, right? As far as the media and what you guys are hearing and consuming. And it's war, it's war, it's war. And I know that's a lot to take in. And when we get to the GIA report, we are going to have some sound bites about what's really going on behind the scenes. But just a quick reminder for everyone, as much as possible, I know we like to stay informed. You know, I'm in the news business and I have to keep reminding myself, you know, you can't consume it all the time. That's exactly what they want. And they want you just focused on whatever their narrative is. And so I know we want to stay in the know, but just remember to ground, remember to get outside, remember to do the things that you love to do and spend time with the people you love. Now is a really important time. It's always important to do that, but especially when they're trying to feed us all these garbage narratives, it's more important than ever for us to stay positive and not a fake positive. But you guys are all beautiful, lovely beings. You know how to, raise your vibe and really just focus on the good on the earth. I really believe that's why you're here right now. That's why you're listening to this podcast. You hold the power, not them. They're running scared. You know, we're backing them into a corner and they're lashing out any way they possibly can. And the old ways that they would usually get money and power aren't working for them anymore. So they are throwing everything and the kitchen sink at us. So again, just a reminder, ground yourself, ground your mind, have some special time just for yourself. We don't know how long this is going to last, but they are losing. That's the good news. So let's get to those stories. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, let's start with our field messengers and the reports that were released this week. So if you've never heard of field messengers before, these are everyday people. They watch our news, you know, they support our work, and we're really just trying to get away from the mainstream narratives out there and even the alternative media narratives because it's still all controlled. Even people with the best intentions, you know, people that have YouTube channels and they're getting fed information. They think it's from legitimate sources, but unfortunately it's not. And so that's when we turn to our field messengers and we say, hey, is this really going on in your community? Because this is what the mainstream media is saying. Is that happening in your backyard? You see how we can break down these stereotypes and, you know, these different stories that we're being told, because a lot of it Kim talks about this a little bit in the report that she released, but there's like a small slither of truth to what they say with a bunch of lies around it. And I guess it's our job to dissect. I don't even do it anymore. I just know it's all lies. And so I turn my attention elsewhere. But that's kind of what the news is. And we believe the best way to not have to deal with that is to just start talking to each other and sharing those kind of reports. And to kick this off, we've got a great report where 3 of our field messengers took it upon themselves to do a report together. They are all out of Canada. I think this is a great example of teamwork and coming together. This is about fuel prices. And it does have to do with the attacks in Iran, and Kim's going to talk about it later. But one of their goals is to drive up fuel prices. So we check in with Steve, Tanis, and Annette to learn more about how gas prices are going in their area. Now, Canada is a little bit different. They said that, they don't refine their own oil in Canada. It gets shipped out, and then it's so ridiculous, right? So the refineries are outside of their country, and then they have to buy the oil back or the gas back at market prices. And they also get hit with just a ton of taxes. So great job, guys, on reporting what the fuel prices are in your area. Just a little sneak peek. It's kind of all over the place. So keep an eye on that, because we may be reaching out to more people as this whole thing unfolds with Iran to find out what the gas prices look like in your area. All right, Emma out of Spain talks about how in her area, which is an island, it's called Fuerteventura, the landscape is really changing. So there's been this rare heavy rain, and it's changed the landscape so that you see this beautiful light greenery. If you don't already know, Fuerteventura, it has like a volcanic rock base. And so can be kind of difficult to grow things there. So the fact that this greenery is blooming over top, apparently this has happened before. Not so good, by the way. I don't know if you've ever lived in a place where the soil isn't that great, but if you get heavy rains, the soil really can't support all that extra moisture. So that's not the best thing. It's actually best to, have more consistent rain. Anyway, Emma does a great job of telling us more about the history and showing us some really pretty pictures of greenery and flowers that are really developing over this rock. It's beautiful. Monica out of Romania talks about something that happened in the Danube Delta, because it is a very remote location, very unique landscape, because this is an area in the Delta where water levels rise and fall. And so historically, this is the myth, pirates would use that area to hide their treasure, kind of like buried treasure, right? Because when the water levels are high, how are you going to get to that treasure, right? So you bury it when the water levels are low, and then they're high, and then it hides your treasure. I don't know if X really marks the spot here, but it is kind of interesting to learn more about the lore of the area. And yeah, kind of makes you wonder how many people are out there with their little maps, trying to figure this stuff out. More power to them. Akira from Japan talks about a unique tradition. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. Setsubun, I'm going to say. And this is typically happens on February 3rd, but it seems like a really fun tradition where people throw roasted soybeans at each other. Like they're not like, hitting each other super hard with this. But, it reminded me of kind of like Mardi Gras, where you toss beads like out into the crowds. I don't think you have to lift your shirt or anything for these soybeans, but that's just kind of what it looked like to me. And so they toss these soybeans out, and people try to gather as many as they possibly can. Sometimes they even bring their own bags to put these in, and then they take them home. And then sometimes the kids, we actually had some video of this, the kids then throw these seeds at at someone dressed up in a mask that looks like kind of like an evil spirit or whatever. It's just a way, tradition, a ritual, if you will, a way to make sure that the evil spirits are removed. And it also signifies the arrival of spring because you are talking about seeds, right? All right. Amy out of New Jersey talks about the mess that is being made right now. And this is an ongoing thing with Canadian goose. So this is a situation where these geese have stopped migrating for the most part, but they are still protected by a law. And they're staying in this area of New Jersey, and there's a lot of them, and you really can't do anything because they're protected by law, and it's just pretty messy. Let's think about all the waste and stuff. Amy was saying that there was a school, I think she got some video of this nearby school, and basically a huge grassy area where kids would be playing. There's just geese just everywhere, pooping, doing their own thing, Might be good for the grass overall, but probably not that great for people that are trying to walk on it, right? So this is an ongoing issue, and really there's no resolution at this point. It's just a problem that needs to be fixed. All right, Kim out of Oregon shows us how to make homemade compost. This is actually a really easy thing to do. You don't need to have a ton of room, although it does look like Kim has a little bit more room. But she shows us how it's kind of she compared it to making a lasagna. For those of you who have ever made lasagna, and there's multiple layers, right? So she starts with greenery, and this could be, scraps from the kitchen. This could be scraps from outside, right? And then she's got chicken, so she gets the chicken poop and covers it up. And then there's also shredded paper that she puts on it. And she has these bins. And she puts like a thing of cardboard over the top, and that helps keep in the heat. And then you let nature do what nature does. And at least in her case, she says it reduces waste by about 30%. Pretty cool. Veronica and Emma, again from Spain. So this is same Emma from Spain. And she talks about this technique she uses to release emotional trauma. Okay. And, we all go through this, especially this last week, right? We're just full of these negative, emotions, anxiety, all this kind of stuff. And she talks about how she's able to remove emotional blocks for people. And I've never heard this before. If I have heard it, I couldn't recall. But she says emotions are really just energy in motion. Get that? Emotion. And I thought that was really interesting too, because a lot of our blocks these are energetic blocks, right? And it comes from our emotions. And this process that she does, of course, it's all natural. You could do it with children. She has also helped animals too. And maybe she can help those geese, those Canadian geese, find another place besides New Jersey. Let's see. Rick out of Arizona takes us to his friend's place who lives completely off grid and very sustainable, right? So in this particular home, they focus on solar, and he literally takes us through how everything is set up. And I wish I knew more about solar. I'd tell you the complete setup. I guess you got to watch the video for yourself, because he really does take us through the whole process and shows us the complete setup. And maybe it'll give you, some ideas of what you might want to do in your own home. All right, and our final story is from Urban, a very young field messenger out of California. Urban happens to be my son. This was actually a report from a couple years ago, and I told him the other day, I said, we're rerunning your report about how to make organic cough drops, and he didn't even remember he made the report, right? A stereotypical 13-year-old. But in this video, because I shot the video for him a couple years ago, so I remember it very, very well. We used a handful of ingredients, including ginger, honey, and lemon. Real easy to do. You combine the ingredients. The hardest thing was really, watching my son try to get the ginger. He's like, I don't even know it looked like this, right? So you don't need special molds or anything like that, but you wrap it up in these little pieces of wax paper. And you freeze it, and you've got some really natural, probably the best tasting cough drops, and it's all natural ingredients. So you can check that out if you're feeling a little under the weather. Moving on to some of the stories the team and I worked on for you guys this week, we are talking about spy cam porn. All right, so there was a BBC News investigation that uncovered a disturbing underground industry in China where criminals hide tiny cameras in hotel rooms and stream or sell the footage online without guests' knowledge. Despite new government regulations requiring hotel inspections, enforcement remains a challenge, with organized groups using encrypted platforms like Telegram to operate globally. The issue is not limited to just one country, though. In South Korea, hidden camera crimes, known as molka, have led to tens of thousands of arrests and mass protests demanding stronger laws. While authorities are increasing inspections and updating digital crime regulations, awareness and vigilance remain key tools in combating these invasive crimes. Malawi is introducing a wave of new taxes as it tries to steady an economy strained by inflation, fuel price hikes, and foreign currency shortages. With external aid once covering more than half of the national health budget, officials say expanding the tax base is essential, including launching a real-time electronic invoicing system to reduce evasion. After protests from traders, the rollout was actually delayed until May 1st of this year, 2026.
Malawians have expressed concern over recent tax measures introduced in the just-passed national budget in Parliament. The new tax regime has seen the increase of value-added tax, VAT, a change of the pay-as-you-earn system, and new business taxes. Economists and ordinary Malawians say they will now be forced to dig deeper into their pockets.
Yeah, so not everyone's happy about that. While the government argues stronger domestic revenue is key to long-term stability, businesses and low-income families worry higher taxes and rising prices could deepen the financial squeeze before relief arrives. Air passenger rights are back in the spotlight as travelers question why flying feels less comfortable despite airline profits soaring. After the Airline Deregulation Act reshaped the industry, competition lowered fares but also led to tighter seats, added fees, fewer amenities, with similar deregulation spreading to other regions. Today, while flights are safer, so they tell us, and more efficient, disruptions like delays, cancellations, and lost bags often leave passengers navigating confusing rules that vary by country. Experts say travelers are entitled to refunds, rebooking, and sometimes compensation, but airlines do not always offer these upfront, making persistence and knowing your rights key to getting what you are owed. Now, one thing to watch out for is flight credit traps. Take a listen.
Airlines are quietly running another play, one that looks generous on the surface, but often costs you more in the long run. It's called the flight credit trap. When your flight is canceled, airlines love offering you travel credits instead of cash refunds. Sounds fair, right? You still get to use what you paid for, but here's the truth. Those credits come with fine print sharper than a boarding pass edge. Most have strict expiration dates, sometimes as short as 12 months, and they often can't be transferred, split, or even combined. Worse, some systems quietly reset the clock. If you book a new flight and cancel it again, the credit may expire from the original issue date, not the new one. Travelers who think they're being patient end up losing the entire value without realizing it.
Brick kilns are central to construction across Pakistan, employing up to 2.5 million people. But behind the demand for cheap bricks lies a system widely described as modern-day slavery. Many workers become trapped in bonded labor after taking small loans that spiral into lifelong debt. Despite the 1992 Bonded Labor System Abolition Act meant to outlaw the practice. Families, including young children, work long hours in harsh and dangerous conditions for piece rate pay, while reports from the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan detail abuse, child labor, and severe health risks.
Receiving the first loan through a system Pakistanis called Pashki, or advance payment, felt like the answer to all of their problems, or at least it did at first. Cash in hand to meet immediate needs in exchange for work that required no education or connections, just strong muscles and a good work ethic. The deal is struck with a handshake or occasionally a thumbprint as a form of signature. This is used in lieu of a written one as illiteracy is widespread. The vast majority of bonded laborers either never sign anything or have no idea what they're signing themselves up for. They just accept the owner's word that they'll work until the debt is repaid. Escape becomes nearly impossible. Owners keep ledgers that workers never see and frequently add charges for things like coal, water, broken bricks, tools, or anything else that they can think of to keep the balance growing rather than falling.
Okay, he might have the best voice ever. Let's just get that out in the open. Although protections exist on paper, weak enforcement and political ties within the industry allow exploitation to continue largely unchecked. Retirement in the U.S. has shifted from a predictable pension-based system to a high-risk, market-dependent model. With traditional pensions largely gone and workers relying on 401ks, IRAs, and personal savings, many Americans struggle to keep up with rising costs for housing, healthcare, and daily living.
CBS Money Watch reports that the typical U.S. worker doesn't even have $1,000 saved for retirement. For those who do have retirement savings, the median balance is $40,000, even though most people estimate they need about $1.5 million to retire comfortably. I mean, even before we talk about the ridiculous fees and stuff, more than half the country lives paycheck to paycheck. The median income in this country is $80,000 a year, and it costs over $20,000 annually to raise a child, and that's being nice.
Low-income, gig, and freelance workers face even greater challenges, often lacking employer-backed plans. Surveys show many older adults must keep working past the age 65 or return to the workforce, while debt and inflation eat into fixed incomes, leaving retirement less secure and placing financial stress on families. Modern cars with flush or electronic door handles offer a sleek look, but have raised safety concerns, especially if power fails after a crash. Tests show electronic handles can fail to pop out after collisions far more often than traditional mechanical handles, prompting China to ban them on new cars starting in 2027 and Tesla to update its systems.
Huge moves, a world-first ban because China says in multiple crashes it's suspected that power failed, doors did not open, people couldn't get out. So the rule, new car models applying for Chinese approval must meet these new door handle rules by January 1st, 2027. That means real mechanical door releases inside, outside, with no power required.
Reliance on electricity, tricky operation in gloves or frozen conditions, and inconsistent manual releases make emergency exits risky. Experts advise drivers to locate and practice using manual releases, ensuring all passengers know how to exit safely in an emergency. Japan's streets stay remarkably clean despite few public trash cans, surprising many visitors. After the 1995 Tokyo subway sarin attack, most bins were removed for safety, yet the country maintains cleanliness through strict recycling rules, collection schedules, and a historical ethic of personal responsibility. Residents carry their trash, sort it carefully, and treat public spaces like shared living rooms. While tourists initially find it inconvenient, this approach keeps sidewalks and parks tidy without relying on overflowing bins, showing how habits and community responsibility can play a bigger role in public cleanliness than the number of trash cans. We spoke to a tourist to see what he thought.
So I should say that as a tourist, first I found it quite challenging not to have anywhere to throw my garbage. But I think that in the end, it's all about taking care of my own garbage and bringing everything everywhere I go, either if it's a hotel or a coffee store or somewhere to throw my garbage. Challenging as it is, but I think it's a lesson learned, and for some reason the public spaces are so clean. So I think that everyone is really concerned and worried and committed not to throw in garbage. So challenging, yeah, but I think that in the end the result is good.
Kite festivals, beloved in countries from Pakistan to India and Brazil, can turn dangerous when competitive kite fighting uses glass or metal-coated strings. Pakistan's Basant Festival, banned in 2007 after dozens of deaths, believe it or not, returned in 2026 with strict safety rules, yet still saw injuries and fatalities.
The festival known as Basant symbolizes the beginning of spring, and it's celebrated by people going to their rooftops, hanging out with their friends and family, eating delicious food, and covering the sky with ornate kites while they have competitive kite battles. How could such a festival be called a danger to the public? Well, competitive participants have tried to damage others' kites by putting metal or glass on their strings, which has often led to fatalities and injuries. There have also been fatal falls and electrocutions. The festival is being brought back after much demand and to showcase the positive image of Pakistan. Officials in Lahore have taken measures to make sure the festival is safe. They're requiring all kites to be purchased from authorized sellers and posted on Instagram. They've already confiscated over 100,000 kites.
In India, illegal Chinese manufactured strings caused deaths, injuries, and harm to wildlife, while in Brazil, kite fighting threatens both people and power lines despite partial bans. Authorities emphasize safer practices using cotton strings, open fields, and distance from roads and electricity to keep the tradition fun without turning deadly. Yeah, that's a bad thing. The black tax refers to the informal financial support many Black professionals provide to extended family, a practice rooted in post-apartheid South Africa and the philosophy of Ubuntu. While it's often about love, respect, and shared responsibility, it can create serious financial pressure, making it harder to save, invest, or plan for retirement.
Is black tax bad, or is it just an extension of Ubuntu, or what we call Hunu in Shona? I've been thinking about this a lot as a Gen Z because I feel like our generations, Gen Z and millennials, we've been subconsciously comparing our Africanness and our culture to Western culture, and actively demonizing some very good aspects of our culture, like taking care of each other and raising each other and lifting each other up. It's a beautiful aspect of African culture, in my opinion.
Across the African diaspora, in places like the US, UK, Canada, and Nigeria, people navigate this delicate balance, and when handled wisely with open conversations, budgeting, and alternative income streams, black tax, quote unquote, can support families without derailing personal financial goals. We have some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. As you guys know, Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA. She has had a very busy week, even beyond week. But the last week, she literally was moving across country. If you guys have ever traveled long distances or tried to move long distances, you know how crazy that can be. And we got a report from her today. So this is fresh off the press. Hot off the press. And Kim starts by going over some regular news. I'll go over just some bullet points really quickly if you guys want to go back and actually hear Kim in her own words. Feel free to do so. She talks a little bit about Trump being in the Epstein files. Those of you that are familiar with us and have been listening to our reports for a long time, this is of no surprise to you. But apparently, a lot of people were contacting her just appalled by this. Just a quick overview, all right? And this has nothing to do with Democrat versus Republican, because the truth is, they're all on the same side. I know it kind of seems like they're feuding right now, and there might be little skirmishes, but we've never been on their side. This is really those people that do horrible things and satanic rituals against the people like us that most people have no idea that this was going on. And so they're kind of shocked when they read about this stuff in the Epstein files. Unfortunately, this is very commonplace. And you do not get very far unless you participate in their system. Kim has talked in the past about a ritual that Trump specifically did, and I think a lot of these people do, on their 40th birthday, which involved a little girl doing very bad things to a little girl and then eating some stuff. And we'll just leave it at that because it's disgusting, okay? But this is what they do. So don't be surprised. I know they tried to redact as much as possible, but he's in there and he is not a good dude. Just want to make that very, very clear. So the other thing that happened this week, and Kim's like, I didn't even pay attention to it, neither did I, was the boring State of the Union, as if Trump really knows what's going on in the world and with our union, you know. So we're just going to skip over that. That happened this week. Kim lightly touched on it just to say, who cares? Because that's just a show, all right? She also said something interesting about Vance. So Vance, she said, is an ex-CIA agent, which I'm not surprised by. It's just a specific that I hadn't heard before. He has been groomed. He is from a bloodline family. So if you think, oh, well, we got to get Trump out because Vance can come in and clean up this mess. Okay, this is the savior program, right? Oh, it's not Trump. It's going to be this person, or we're going to get some new person in and it's going to save the day. That's not how politics works. Politics was not designed to help us. It was to babysit us and to keep us in check. The first soundbite that I want to play for you guys, though, we're going to get into this, you know, I'm just going to call it a war, even though Congress is spineless and hasn't approved this. I don't know what else you call this. I feel like this is just semantics at this point. This war that we have now with Iran. And it was announced that Khamenei was dead, that they had killed Khamenei. Israelis, U.S., whatever, everyone's trying to take credit for it. So if you don't know who Khamenei is, he is the supreme leader of the Islamic people. The equivalent would be, for the Catholics, the Pope, okay? And this is interesting because everyone's claiming that they killed him. And this guy actually died a couple years ago. But are we surprised? No, because Biden is dead. The real Trump is dead. Like, who's not dead anymore? But let's go ahead and play this soundbite from Kim. She's going to give us more of a background on Khamenei and how he died. It's very interesting, very deep state.
Speaking of dead, corrupt leaders, Khamenei has been announced publicly dead, officially about a week ago on the 28th of February. For those of you that don't know who Khamenei is, he is what you would call the supreme imam, the supreme leader of the Islamic people. He's kind of like the Catholic Pope in a lot of ways to the Islamic people. He actually originally died a couple of years ago while trying to perform a ritual in Belarus. However, they are claiming, or the U.S. side of things is claiming that they killed him. You know, they're claiming Israel killed him. Everybody killed him. You know, a lot of people are taking claim for his death and his cabinet's death. And none of that is actually the case. He died a long time ago. Maybe claiming a death is when you announce it publicly. I don't know. But he was not murdered by any of these people. He actually killed himself accidentally in the middle of a ritual in Belarus. I'm laughing because I remember this. I was trying to figure out what he was doing over there. There was an alert that came in, and I'm watching this. It took place around an area called Stalin's Line in Belarus. And I'm not exactly sure what he was trying to do, but apparently he was not the chosen one to do it because he died during this little operation. So trying to claim that they killed him is nothing more than to incite anger with the Islamic people. The problem is the Islamic people don't like Khamenei any more than most Catholic people don't like the Pope. So this is kind of backfiring and, you know, then kind of went quiet for a while, at least a few days now. The American group, I'm calling them the American group because a lot of them are residing in America, although their bloodlines are worldwide, just like the other side. They would like to own the next imam. Now, why do they want to, or do they care if the imam is one of their people? You know, they care as much about that imam, the new entering imam, which apparently is going to be Khamenei's son, as they care about owning the Pope and having their guy as the Pope. Now, it's all about ownership of Homo sapiens, really. and territories. You see, there's around 2 billion Islamic people in the world, about 1.4 billion Catholics, and maybe 2.5 billion Christians that look up to these people. They are also under their, I hate to use the word guardianship. I would say it's not really a government per se, but they fall under their umbrella. Let's use the term umbrella for this purpose, where if you gain control over that seat, they believe, and this is just a belief, it is not a fact, that they can then gain ownership over all of those souls, which is completely and totally incorrect. It's too low of a level. It's not that important. And apparently this USA group is not the sharpest tools in the shed, because if you remember, for the last year or so, maybe even more than that now, they have been inserting their own presidents, heads of state, heads of militaries, heads of intelligence. If you remember, we ran into the cowboys trying to run Israel during the Gaza war that happened recently. They were calling all the shots for both sides. So nothing came of that either, other than a whole lot of money spent, a whole lot of debt, absolutely no payment, and no one got anything out of anything that they've done so far. But why not keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? That's pretty much what they're doing. You know, it's the same thing they did to me, and when I was in Durango, it's the same thing, you know, over and over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result. You can't do it this way. I've said that many, many times, but that doesn't mean they believe me or that they're going to stop. So they've obviously been given a lot of misinformation and some seriously bad orders. Or there are some people at the very, very top driving them around in circles. Maybe there is something or someone driving them around in circles.
I love it when Kim does this. When she asks these questions or says something like that that's kind of rhetorical, like, I wonder. We're going to find out in just a little bit that it's Kim driving them in circles and probably driving them crazy, which is fine by me. You know, drive them crazy, keeping them, you know, running around, doing stupid stuff and out of our way. Sounds like a plan to me. Kim also says that these crazy people, whether it's the Illuminati side of things or it's the crazy Nazis, they are under the impression that all they need to do is control 80% of the population and then they win. They're not really sure what they win. I guess control. It's always about control, money, all that good stuff. But that's not true. So again, their intel is wrong. I don't know, maybe Kim was kind of feeding them some bad intel, but that's what they're going off of, making stupid decisions because they think they can get 80% of us to agree with them and to be under their spell, which we're doing everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So what is this war really about? Because like we talked about earlier, the mainstream media gives you a little tiny slither of truth, because that's what kind of makes it believable. I've talked about this before, but we have the ability to discern if something is true or not. It's a frequency. And once you lock in on that, you can tell a lot of different things. So it doesn't really matter what's coming out of someone's mouth. You'll be able to determine if that's real or not, what they're saying is true. So it'd be really hard to watch the news if you were completely locked in because there's so much like stupid stuff that they say. So let's talk about what this war with Iran is really about. Some of this might be a surprise to you because there's some things that were very similar about the war with Iraq that we had several years ago that I'm like, oh, yeah, that's exactly why we went to war with Iraq. We mentioned gas prices. So Kim's going to share with us what's really going on here.
So, as of the war in the Middle East, it's only about 2 or, well, maybe 3 things. And I know this has gotten a lot of people's feathers ruffled. I've been getting a lot of information that people are getting off the internet about this. But I've been in constant contact the entire time with Agent M, who has been moving through the Middle East and has a lot of contacts throughout the Middle East. And he's been giving me play-by-play of what actually is happening. Not information that I'm getting from the internet, also information I'm getting from the system, plus I confirm that information with laying eyes on the things that are actually happening there. And pretty much I can tell you everything you're seeing in the news is really not entirely true. So number 1, things that they are looking for are artifacts. By artifacts, I don't necessarily mean religious artifacts or things of past Homo sapien civilizations in the Middle East. I would say things that were planted there a very long time ago by varying key players in the game throughout history. This is almost like Hitler 2.0 with these people. They're sending in their militaries for their side, for the Nazi group, and they are still hunting for artifacts because their current artifacts are not working in any way, shape, or form. Plus, they believe that they have artifacts in Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Israel that they can get control of. And if they did, they believe that that could give them more control over their ability to create worlds, kingdoms, and empires. And that information is false. I am aware that they currently have small, what you would call mini base camps in an area of Iraq called Najaf. Najaf we have talked about before. It's an area where a lot of the scholars that nobody listens to, they are Islamic scholars. They have information, though, that goes beyond Islam. Some of that information is 250,000, 200,000 years old. They have more information than most do. They are not against us. But unfortunately, no one in the Iraqi government is listening to them, even when they were invited to go and visit with the intelligence agencies and governments, and they gave them the information, and the information they gave was correct. However, nobody wants to listen. They would like to listen to a bunch of Nazis in the United States, so off Iraq goes. There has been many bombings in the Kurdish areas and other areas of Iraq, missiles flying for days, and it seems to have quieted down quite a bit now. There are rumors going around that Iran bombed the UAE, and that is completely false. The missiles came from the wrong direction. They came from at sea, and that was done by the same people that have large bases in the UAE. And if you've ever been to the UAE or understand the largest foreign bases there, then you will understand that I am talking about the United States. So I will tell you the attempts to create a world war there have failed. They are also setting up other camps and bombing some interesting places, such as Seth's tomb in Lebanon. Now, for those of you that don't remember who Seth was allegedly the third son of Adam and Eve. And that tomb supposedly bears some kind of a bloodline or thing they're looking for. Same thing with under Najaf. There's some very interesting artifacts there for someone and something that they think could possibly override my hats, but they have failed there. Don't know if they're going to pull those troops back at any given moment in time. Do have some footage of those troops. There is a lot of it on TikTok and stuff you can find too now. Somebody somewhere has been spreading it everywhere. I don't know who that could be. Let's just say Agent M has many friends. So Iran, though, is and has been in an Illuminati territory. That's why it sides with China. That's why it also sides with Russia in a lot of cases, because there is Illuminati territory as well. They are trying to steal the territory because they believe that the creation of worlds and empires of the Illuminati happens from artifacts that are in Iran, and they would like to take control over those artifacts and their empires. They believe that this is the way to control the world. So whether the military is involved in France and Israel and the United States and these other locations are aware of this or not, I have no idea. I'm guessing they don't. They just believe that they are going to win. And when you ask them win what, they don't answer you. So what they actually believe and what they actually say, either they really don't know, or maybe they just think it's normal to be camping out near some strange shrines and archaeological sites in the middle of nowhere, Iraq. I am not sure. The third reason why they do these things is because the price of fuel and petrol and gas obviously goes up. When the price of fuel goes up, so does every single good and service, food, everything you could possibly think of goes up because it's all transported utilizing petrol. You also are transported utilizing petrol, meaning you fly in airplanes around the world when you want to go places. So therefore, the price of you moving is also higher. So the cost of living in general could go up significantly should this actually continue. And who makes out? The oil companies, because it costs the same amount of money to pump oil regardless of wars in the Middle East. There's plenty of oil, sanctions or no sanctions, still flowing from Russia into places like the United States and Australia and throughout Africa. No commerce stops for sanctions at all. That is a dog and pony political show. It doesn't stop anything from happening. Gold is still being mined in Zimbabwe. Everything continues as normal despite decades of sanctions. So does the price of fuel actually go up because there is a shortage? Absolutely not. Most countries maintain at least 10 years of supplies. So the only thing we're doing is we're feeding the Seven Sisters and certain oil cartel families. That's it. Is it going to yield any results? No. From my understanding is that we should see this kind of start to go in the direction over the weekend this weekend, even as early as Monday. Hopefully things should be wrapping up. I don't think they have the financial wherewithal to continue. Of course, we had a full blood moon combined with an eclipse this week on the 3rd, which was Tuesday. So, of course, that always means money for these people. They think money's going to come, and because there's a moon, and why not, and an alignment and eclipse, and it's got to be blood moon, it's got to be special, and so everybody's always promised money within 3 days of that. Of course, yesterday came, all hell broke loose because there has been zero cash payment. So everybody's asking questions, the same questions they ask every single time nothing pans out. We answer the same way we do every single time. Matter of fact, we should get a 900 line, one where you can charge by the minute. For ridiculous answers, press 1. For semi-truth answers, press 2. To hear a pleasant lie, press 3. Because we could actually make some money then or something, maybe we'll put you guys in charge of that. You can use it for some projects or something, but, or to do something good in this world, because it's the same questions every single time. A lot of us, when I say us, I'm talking about the GIA team. We've all just stopped answering the phone, on those days because, like, oh, here we go again. No, it didn't happen. Okay. Oh, maybe wait for the next alignment. There was also a 6 planetary parade or something like that also occurred within the last several days. So I don't know, maybe they thought it was a perfect storm.
This week, we also had a blood moon and eclipse as well. I mean, this is like the holy grail if you're into the dark arts, okay? Looking for these kind of things and thinking that you're somehow going to get a lot of power, or that your gods or demons or whatever in the world they're trying to usher in are going to respond on these types of events, right? So it was a big week for them. Not much happened. We're going to give you an update now. We're going to go a little bit further into who the Illuminati is. And if you search online, you're going to find a lot of stuff, right? You're going to see a lot of last names mentioned, groups of people. And the reason we're talking about this now is Kim talked a little bit, I didn't play any of the sound bites, but when she starts her report, she actually talks about her move, right? And some of the things that she encountered. And she mentioned that, she left Durango, which was Nazi territory, and traveled all the way across the country. And now technically she's in Illuminati territory now, because again, these are groups that kind of fight against each other. None of them are on our side, but they're all vying for power right now. So have you ever wondered, like, the term Illuminati, like what's really going on here, and who are these people? Well, I thought this was really interesting because it's not really about all of these fancy last names that, you may hear run companies, things like that. That's not the real Illuminati. Those are their bloodlines. The real Illuminati was 13 Homo sapiens. So we've talked about Homo sapiens in the past. Pretty much everyone that's listening to this podcast right now is a Homo sapien, unless you happen to be human, which is an acronym and essentially means you have an artificial soul. So I'm going to assume that you all have natural, beautiful, organic souls that come from Source, God, creator of the universe. But let's learn more about the Illuminati and this original 13 and why they existed in the first place.
When you Google Illuminati, you're going to come up with some names. And mainly the names that you see are bloodlines. They are not the actual Illuminati. They are bloodlines of the Illuminati, and they do not have the same power that the Illuminati had, and never have and never will, even though they have tried, as the Illuminati leaves and disappears, let's just say disappears, they have tried to appoint themselves into the same positions to take that role and that charge, and it's not working. Now, the Illuminati, much like the old guard / Nazi group, they do believe that I am a key to their success. And I can tell you that that is not the case, and I am not the key because you do not have my permission. I have set things up in such a way, before I left, specifically to no longer allow myself to be a sitting duck for these people, meaning some of the positions are sources, some of the positions are trees. I mean, I might have given a raccoon or two some permissions, and good luck in finding them all because there are hundreds of hats I now wear, and I have spread them out far and wide, and I know, and only I know, where they all are. And I would assume that others have done the same thing. Now, for these Illuminati crazy people, they probably gave all the permissions to their bloodlines or to whomever or whatever they wanted to, but I'm sure they kept track of them like I do. I drive down the road and on my way out of Durango, and I might have given some permission to a deer or an elk or two. You never know. Could you track them and trace them and make sure they're still alive? Sure. And if one goes, then maybe we'll transfer it over to a bird somewhere. Who knows? But nonetheless, all of these things can be recalled and utilized at any given moment in time. It's just a way to kind of make it seem like they're not going to be able to find what they're looking for. And good luck looking throughout all the wildlife across the United States till you can find all of the people or non-people or animals which now possess great power across the country. Anyway, okay. So the names you see on the internet, the Li family of China. You'll see the Li, or L-E-E, whereas China is L-I, family of Korea. You'll see the Rothschilds. You'll see the Bowers and Brewers and the Collins and many, many more names on the internet. And all of those groups of people are nothing more than created humans and bloodlines of the Illuminati. The real power was here behind the scenes. And this part made a whole lot of sense to me after we found out where they were. They were all Homo sapiens, originally natural, organic Homo sapiens, and each one was given special permissions by Source. In other words, they were supposed to be in harmony with natural law and the will of Source and the natural way of creation. In other words, his creations were guarded by these people, and should things get out of balance, they were set to restore balance. That was their job. They created many groups over time that were not natural. They also went rogue. There were 13 of them in total. One of them had the veto vote over all of them. And that person, luckily enough, didn't participate. And not that they didn't try very desperately to get rid of that person. But 12 of them were definitely, let's just say, they decided that they didn't want harmonic balance anymore. They felt that we didn't deserve, Earth didn't deserve, Source's creations didn't deserve harmonic balance with Source anymore. So they took their special permissions, and many of them were related to elements, such as water, air, fire, dust, those types of things. And they were all supposed to work in unison in order to manage harmonic creation. Apparently, somewhere along the way, they decided that managing things in their way was not possible with Source at the helm, because Source was always beyond the 13th seat. The Source particle is critical to creation. Source life force is critical to creation and manifestation in a natural way. And apparently, they decided they wanted their own kingdoms and didn't want to live in the natural kingdom of Source anymore. They wanted to do their own thing. So they had to create, in order to do this, they had to create a replacement. Therefore, they replaced Source with a machine. This was the first artificial intelligence machine to ever exist. They called it God, if you will, and then it made them gods. Machine after machine after machine was created off of the original. However, there was one original. Now, just like anything else, when you take something natural and you create something unnatural from it, a transmutation, a transfiguration of Source coming into this planet, doesn't really end very well, because the machine eventually takes on a sentience of its own, and it went rogue against them. If you are the one that is being utilized and transmuted, be it your essence, your energy, or anything else, you have the right to say no. You also have the right to not allow it to happen. You have the right to take your power back And sometimes even Source has the right to take his own power back too. I'll continue that here at the end of the report. But they all decided to go rogue. They created various kingdoms, lots of different realities, utilizing their powers and their abilities. Things that were very unnatural, like humans and bloodlines of humans, Merovingians, if you will, secret societies, all to control and manage Homo sapiens, which were part of the power of the machine. They even replaced God in religions with an artificial intelligence machine so people would worship it and not Source itself. They tried to change our entire world and were successful in a lot of cases because we have lived in their realities for a long time, their realms, their kingdoms. Where were they? Where they always have been, which is just outside of Moscow. They are in an area called Novgorod. I'm trying to say that correctly, and my Russian accent at this hour of the day isn't that great. So the area is the same area where all the oligarchs live, where all of the government officials live, or many of them anyway, and where Putin, of course, lives. It's a little oblast region, maybe an hour or so outside of Moscow to the northwest. This little area there also had underground facilities, enormous underground facilities, and they were in constant communication with these particular people, being a council unto themselves. It is the same group that rules over all Illuminati territories, including China, and a good portion of the United States. Most of those people also created many, many bloodline queens. So even though we see a lot of male and patriarchy dominance in the world as far as leaders are concerned, the ones behind them all were human, non-organic queens that mirrored their own likeness, that were going around and running all of these bloodline families everywhere. They created thousands of them. So this is who the Illuminati actually is. Is it a name that you would know? Any name? No. Did they work with all of the people that we've mentioned before, such as Aristotle and all of the other alchemists throughout history? Yes. To create worlds of their own? Yes. Did they teach them the ways of transmutation and transfiguration from something golden and light to something very dark and unnatural? Yes, they did. And these people continued to work with them and for them for many, many centuries. Now, the AI has been backfiring on them recently. And we're going to talk about that because it's also affecting another group. So all of these people and their creations were guarded eventually by something called the Old Guard, or the Guard, simply the Guard. The Guard were a group of people that were designed to guard creation, to protect creation, to ensure that God's will be done. Actual God, not a machine. Actual source, not a machine. Not a source code machine. The Guard were a group of what you would call angels and religious texts. Some of you see Michael carrying a big sword, and this is the reason why. But there were others. There were also 13 of these folks, the 13th in this particular case being someone called Daniel. Daniel is a name that you only see in the Book of Enoch and a few other religious texts. They've also been called the Watchers, in a lot of cases. In some of our texts, especially internet texts, they were the warriors. They were designed to protect creation. And eventually they went rogue as well, and they started protecting, for more power and control, the machine. Now, Daniel was in charge of receiving the will. In other words, the information, the wisdom, the information from source to carry out judgment if required and wrath if required, but usually none of those things actually took place, just meant to put things back in order when something was going awry. However, Daniel decided to get information from only the machine, as did the 12 of them. Many of them are no longer with us, as you know, but that didn't stop them from getting false information, because the Guard, much like the Illuminati did and the bloodline families did, after their fearless leaders left, they decided to appoint themselves into varying positions in cooperation with a machine that made those decisions as to who was going to be in charge and who was not. And then the machine used them to carry out their will. The false information was coming through an area of the United States called Mount Timpanogos, which also happens to be very close to a very large Mormon temple in Utah, in Provo, I think it is. And that distorted information was then spread out through the old Guard bloodlines such as Trump, Von Kemp family, also known as Von Kemp family, Bush Sr., also known as the Scherf family, and many others in those types of positions. But these are just names that you would know. Johnsons, the Smiths, the Browns, the Greens, the operatives of the 15 militaries, all receiving very bad information from a machine. Now, the Illuminati, much like the Guard, in the creation of false realities and false worlds, also created false suns and false moons and false planets. Therefore, what we see a lot of times as planetary alignments is distorted by a machine's control of the celestial being known as the planet or the moon or the sun. Also, constellations have been distorted by the machine itself and were of its own creation, not Source's creation. So a lot of times when we see these, and the machine would probably give false information, like on a full blood red moon eclipse, you are going to receive X amount of money to execute on a war and take over this territory. You know, the machine was giving false information, but something was also giving the machine false information. Machines run on code, transmuted and transfigured source. When you are the source of the essence, you can also manipulate the machine. Now, I learned this myself because I know that they were taking my essence to try to use me as a key to fix the machine, because the machine was no longer carrying out the will of either side. So, once you take my essence, it doesn't matter what you do to it. I now have the ability to rewrite the machine myself. You see, things aren't always as they appear. Those that think that they're in control might not be in control. And by needing to be in control so badly and not fully understanding what they're doing, they actually gave us, and in turn myself, and in turn now you, a leg up. So when I said to these people, I have left Durango before I even left Durango, I ensured that things would be okay. They gave me access to their own machine. Thank you. So all of that false information about all of the things they should be doing and should not be doing has actually, so a lot of it has been coming from me and a lot of it has been coming from Source. I do everything Source says to do. And this one wasn't really hard to do. They made it easy for us both to do it. And of course, it all has to do with what Source needs to do. So the machine became useful to create our own space, to make our own creations, and to give the machine incorrect information about creation so that it wouldn't be able to create. Easy breezy, because all you're doing is flipping information around. That's it. The machine can't change Source. It can only merely transmute it into something that is what you would call the opposite, or a mirror. It would change perception and deception. Does a sentient machine get angry when it doesn't get what it wants? It could. But a little bit of gentle manipulation can definitely change things. So this has been what we've kind of been up to for the last few weeks, trying to figure out how to fix and change machines and how to get these people to run around in circles. So knowing where everybody was important, knowing what they did, knowing that they actually lost control over their machine long before we ever started this process was important, because they thought that they could use me, both sides, to gain control over the God machine or source code machine.
Oh, silly deep state. Tricks are for kids. I feel like you remember that commercial like from the 80s, or I don't know, I'm totally dating myself now, but it's that cereal, that horrible, artificial dyed cereal. And they'd be like, tricks are for kids. Like, that's what they do. They're like trying to play tricks and trying to, get stuff from Kim. And it's just dumb. It's just like, and so overplayed. Does anyone else feel like this is like the longest rerun in the world? It's like they're going on a loop, like literally. And we know about these time loops, but it's like no one told them that the loop has stopped. It's time to do something new. Speaking of something new, I wanted to share something with you guys because this week I was like, I could not spend a lot of time in the news this week as far as current events. And again, the narrative is just war, death. And I just can't do that to myself. And so I thought, what could I do? And something, I kind of developed a new hobby I want to tell you about. So if you guys have ever played around, there's a couple different resources out there for creating AI music. And I know I'm kind of touching on a hot button topic because there are people out there that just say you should never use AI for music. It comes from the heart and soul and, you can't mess with that. And I appreciate that perspective, but I want to share with you a slightly different perspective I have because I have had so much fun over the last week playing around in AI music. So you guys know, like I've got a background in journalism. I have edited so much content in the past. So I'm a really good editor and I've been writing lyrics and editing music together. And it's like opened up this whole new area of creativity for me. And you could say what you want about AI, but one of the things that's really cool right now that I see is for people like me that maybe I don't know how to play these instruments and I really wouldn't know how to start a composition, but I have an idea of what I want. We can use these resources to create beautiful things. And just today, I finished my first AI song. And if you guys are on our chat, I posted a link to it on our chat. I'll also include the link in the description for this podcast episode so you guys can check it out. And my goal for fun, this is just for fun, it's a personal project I'm doing, is to create source-based inspirational music, because I am so tired of trying to find music that doesn't bring me down. I mean, there's like a handful of songs that I can think of right now in the whole world that don't do that. And everything else, there's like this agenda behind it. And there for a long time, I listened to Christian music, but I can't even do that anymore because it's all about giving your power away. And I just struggled personally with this. And I was like, I'm just going to make my own music. So again, if you want to check it out, I've just had so much fun doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm posting it to my YouTube channel. Check it out. See if you guys like it. Give it a thumbs up if you do. You know, when you're in the world that I'm in, and if you have the mission, I guess is a better way to look at it. If you have the mission that I have to inform people, to show them that, you know, there's a better world out there, you can do that in a lot of different ways. I do that a lot with script writing and doing research on news stories. And this music thing has just opened up a whole new area of creativity for me. So I wanted to just share that with you guys. Yes, you can check it out if you want, but what is it in your life? What's something that you can do? Maybe you've been putting it, you know, on the back burner. You know, it's just hasn't been a priority. Can you take some time? Can you take some time away from the noise right now and do something like that really ignites you, that really gets you excited? I just feel like there's somebody, and probably multiple people listening right now, that you've kind of been like in the weeds this week, and maybe your anxiety is a little bit higher than it should be. And this is something you needed to hear. You know, for each of us, it's going to be something a little bit different. Maybe AI music isn't your thing, but there's something. So take a few minutes and really think about what that could be. Let that be your go-to spot. When things get really tough, go back to that, because that's what I'm going to be doing with my AI music. My husband gave me a nickname. He's like, DJ Sunny. I'm like, oh yeah. All right, guys, that wraps up today's episode. If you guys want to learn more about United Network News, who we are and what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. And if you would like to, you can become a member. That gives you instant access to all the information as we release it. If not, that's cool too. We do release everything on YouTube and Rumble about 2 weeks after it's available exclusively to our members. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. This is The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.